just yet. I'm going to start things off a little differently, but if you want to follow along with our story here tonight, then you can open it up to Genesis 18. We're going to go through the story of Genesis 18. It's going to flow into chapter 19. Genesis 18, it begins with the story of Abraham, and he is being visited by the Lord. Abraham, he is sitting outside of his tent by the oaks of Mamre, and it's the middle of the day, and he is sitting there, and, well, he's soaking up the sun. And I'm not really sure why, but he is staring at the ground. So, maybe he is dozing off for an afternoon nap, or maybe he's been sitting there long enough during the day, just he fell into a daydream, or he's just simply relaxing. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. Regardless of why he's staring at the ground, he looks up, he lifts up his eyes, and he sees three men standing before him. And these three men, well, they must have been at least a little bit of distance away, because he gets up and he runs to them and he bows himself down to the earth and he says, "If I have found favor in your sight, then please don't pass me by. Let me bring you some water so that you can wash up and that you can rest and you can cleanse yourself. And while you're washing yourselves, well, I'm going to go and I'm going to make you some bread and I'm going to bring you some things to eat. And after all of that, and only after all of that, after I've fed you, then you guys can continue on your way, whatever you want to do. But I've got to take care of you first." And so these three men, which we later find out is God and two angels, they say, "Yeah, that sounds like a good idea to us. We'll spend some time with you." And so, Abraham, the husband who has just invited currently unknown guests into the house, well, he kind of, he runs back to the house and he says, "Sarah, Sarah, where are you? I need dinner now." And all the wives are they're feeling like Sarah at this point. They're like, "My goodness, you have given me no time. We need a 5-course meal. I've got no time to make this meal. You've given me no notice. Abraham, who do you think you are coming into my kitchen demanding a meal right now?" And so Abraham, well, he runs out into the field and he gets a calf and he gets one of his young men to prepare the calf and he serves up all of this food to these three men that are now his privileged guests. So the men are eating the meal, and they ask Abraham, "Abraham, where is Sarah, your wife?" And he responds, "Well, she's back in the tent. Should I bring her out? Do you want to pay compliments to the chef? She's back in the tent. If you want her, I can go get her." And God says, "I'll be back around this time next year, and by that time, Sarah, you're going to have a son." Now, Abraham just said that Sarah was back in the tent. And so, God says to Abraham, "I'll be back, and by this time next year, your wife, Sarah, will have a son." And Sarah's back in the tent, but the tent must have not been necessarily extremely far off, or maybe she's got her ear pressed up to the tent flap to try and listen into the conversation. We don't really know, but she's listening in, and so she hears God make the proclamation that next year she is going to have a son. And Sarah is very old at this point. I mean, she has a child at 90 years old, so she finds that pretty funny. She kind of chuckles to herself and she's like, "Oh God, that is a good joke. You are funny. Yeah, I'm going to have a kid? There's no way I'm going to have a kid. That is impossible. I am way past that point in life. I'm not going to have a kid. You're a funny guy. This guy's a jokester, Abraham. You brought a comedian over to the tent. I didn't know that." And so Sarah laughs to herself inside the tent, but then God speaks up and he says, "Why did Sarah laugh and say to herself, 'Will I really have a child even though I'm old? Is anything too hard for the Lord?'" Ooh. If you're Sarah, you are suddenly in a very uncomfortable situation, because she gets called out. And here we get introduced to the core idea of what I want to talk to you about tonight, and that's this. Sometimes we stand in the very presence of God, and we forget what he can do. Why did your wife laugh at what I just said? I wasn't joking around. Why does she not believe what I am saying? Does she not believe the word of the Lord? Does she not realize who I am? Does she not realize that I am God here? Does she not realize that she is in the presence of her very own creator? I'm asking a question here. Is anything too hard for the Lord? If I say Sarah is going to have a son, then is she not going to have a son? Does she know who is sitting here before her? Does she know who is eating her food right now? I don't get it. What's the joke? Fill me in on the joke. Am I joking around here? Does she not know the power that I have? I am going to be back next time this year, and she will have a son. Yes, I am able to do that. I have the power to make that happen. In fact, I have the power to heal, and I have the power to forgive, and I have the power to provide your every need. And you stand in my presence, yet you have forgotten what I am capable of doing. Fill me in on the joke, Sarah. Is anything too hard for me? And Sarah, well, she rightfully gets very, very scared. And she denies it. No, I didn't laugh. I didn't do that. Maybe it was her. It wasn't me. You didn't hear anything coming from this way. But God's not budging. He says, yes, you did. He's not moving. He's not fooling around. Yes, you did laugh at what I said about you having a son. And yes, you did doubt. You did not believe. I heard it. I know you doubted my power. And Sarah, she gets scared because she realizes a couple of things. First of all, she realizes her mistake at laughing at what God had proclaimed. And the second thing is she realizes that she is in the presence of God and she is sinful. She has just sinned. And she gets scared because she comes to a realization that God is able to do whatever he wants to do. God is able to perform the miraculous, and I just laughed it off as if it was nothing. God said he would provide for me a son, and I didn't believe him, and suddenly she is scared because she realizes the power that surrounds her in this moment. Is anything too hard for the Lord? No. Not a single thing is the answer that we are supposed to come to. And so at this point in time, dinner has wrapped up, and the Lord and his angels, well, they walk a little bit to a place where they are overlooking the city of Sodom, and Abraham is tagging alongside them to say farewell and to send them on the way. He is still being a gracious host. And so the Lord, he turns to Abraham and he says, Sodom and Gomorrah are extremely wicked cities. And so I'm going to go and head down there, and I'm going to check the situation out. And we're going to see if it's really as sinful as what the outcry against it says it is. So the two angels, they depart and they take off and they start walking down to the city. But the Lord, he stays standing beside Abraham. And Abraham, well, he kind of shuffles a couple steps closer to God, and he says, will you really sweep away the righteous with the wicked? That doesn't really seem to be like you in my mind. That doesn't seem like your character. And so, let's just, hypothetical question, what if there are 50 righteous people in the city? Are you going to destroy the whole city if there's 50 good people down there? That doesn't seem like you. You don't give the righteous the same judgment as the wicked. That's not like you at all. You are a good and a gracious God. And so, God responds, okay, if there's 50 righteous people in the city, I'll call this whole plan off. We won't go through with it. I won't do it. Then Abraham, well, he speaks up again, and he says, man, this is crazy that I'm even talking to you right now. This is a pretty unreal moment. I am talking to the all-powerful God, and I mean, this is just wild to think about. But God, what if 5 of those 50 people aren't as good as they say they are? What if they aren't as good as they think they are? Would you still wipe out the entire city if there's only 45 people there? And God, well, he thinks about it, and he says, no, I don't think I'd do it. No, 45, I can make that agreement. 45 would be enough. That sounds good to me. And, well, Abraham just kind of got to come up with another idea now of how to get God to a lower number. So, maybe he just kind of coughs. 40. Would you do it for 40? And God's like, yeah, I'd do it for 40. And anyway, he walks them all the way down where if God just finds 10 righteous people, then he won't destroy the city. And they come to that agreement. And this is a bit of a miracle, really, because Abraham gets God to make a deal that in the most sinful city to exist, if he finds just 10 righteous people, he's not going to go through with his plan to destroy the place. So this is really quite a miracle right here. And may I just kind of interject and start preaching a little and say that this intercession that Abraham is carrying out is not meant to be a one-time thing. It's not meant to be something that we just open our Bibles up and we read about and we say, well, that's very nice and good for Abraham. Well, he did very good there. No, we are supposed to do that ourselves. In fact, we can still do that today. We can say, God, there is a city where my nephew is living in, and I want that city to be spared from your judgment. And God, there's a city where my son or daughter is living in, and maybe there's riots kicking up and there's violence in the city, and God, I just want to intercede on that city's behalf right now. Or maybe there's a missionary that comes through and you have him in service and you just say, God, I am praying for that country where the missionary is right now. I just want to intercede on somebody else's behalf. It doesn't really benefit me any, but I just want to send your presence and I want to send your power over to that country. See, you can be, it may sound a little bit cheesy, but you can be a prayer missionary. You can send God's Spirit and his power to places that you cannot step foot into, and you can send his power and his presence into situations that you cannot control, and you can intercede on somebody else's behalf. Just because you pray here in Truth Tabernacle in Bakersfield doesn't mean your prayers are limited to just these four walls. No, you can send them out over the ocean, and you can send them down to South America, and you can say, God, this country, it's not looking too good right now, but I send your power there. Maybe you got family in another country and there's looting and there's rioting, and maybe it's our fellow brothers and sisters in Christ in access challenged nations. We're talking about Afghanistan, Pakistan, the Saudi Arabia and the Emirates. We're talking about places where it's not even legal to go and preach the gospel. You can send your prayer there. What's the power of doing that? Why would we do that? Why do we want to intercede like Abraham interceded? Well, it's because Abraham's intercession, even though it was for a small amount, it brought out more people than what could have ever happened without it. Abraham's intercession and our intercession, see, we may just be praying for one person. We may send our prayer and we just say, God, maybe we just get so focused sometimes in our prayer time. We say, God, I'm just praying for my cousin, or I'm praying for my family, and we just think about that. But the beautiful thing about God is he is willing to bring out more than just what we pray for. He is willing to expand the promise, and he's willing to expand what he can do, because he is in the business of saving people, and he is in the business of bringing people out of sin and into his marvelous light. And so whenever we pray, maybe it's just for a single individual, God can turn that and he can bring a whole family out of that city, and he can bring multiple people instead of just the individual that we are praying for. So it's here in our story where God and Abraham, they part ways. And so here it's where we enter into our second part of the story, and the final story that we're going to look at today. And our second story, well, it's really almost exactly the same as our first story, except there's a couple of key differences here that's going to go on. And so hopefully we can pick them up and dig them out. And so we're going to shift our focus now, because Abraham's story is over, but now the story focuses on Lot. his nephew, who is living in that wicked and evil city that Abraham just interceded for. And Lot, we find, just like Abraham, it's almost a parallel narrative. He is sitting down, and it's in the afternoon. But this time, two angels come, and they were just with Abraham, but they are walking into the city here. And Lot doesn't even realize it as he looks up, but he sees these men coming towards him, and he doesn't realize it, but walking his way, these two individuals walking his way is his miracle. He doesn't know it yet. But as he sits by the gate in the afternoon, here walking towards him are these two angels. It's his miracle, his rescue mission from this sinful city. And just like Abraham, well, he bows before them. And just like Abraham, he invites them home to the house so that they can wash up and spend the night and take a rest. But he does not run out to meet them. He doesn't do it. And that is a key difference. See, Abraham, he ran. It was very specific. He ran out to meet the guests. But Lot doesn't run. For some reason, Lot doesn't recognize the power walking his way. See, Abraham, he recognized something in the guests that were coming his way, and he recognized this is worth running to. Lot, he doesn't recognize it. He doesn't run out to meet them. He just greets them as they come in. These men, to Lot, they weren't important enough to run to. And Lot, well, I'm not trying to paint him as a bad guy. He invites the angels to stay the night with him, and you know, the Bible's kind of funny sometimes, whether we pick up on it or not, but the angels, they respond to this invitation. Lot says, you know, why don't you come home with me, and I'll take care of you, and I'll feed you dinner. And the angels respond, you know, actually, thanks for the invitation, but we thought this town square looked really good. You know, these paving stones looked really comfy, and we were just going to spend the night here. That rock looks so soft. I bet that makes a great pillow. TripAdvisor said top things to do. Sleep in the city square. So that's what we're going to do. That is our plans for the evening. Thank you very much. We don't want your nice feast. But Lot's a good guy. Lot persisted. In fact, the Bible's very clear. Lot persists so strongly that he ended up convincing them to come and stay with them. And so just like Abraham, Lot cooks them up a feast, and he serves them dinner, and they eat. And I assume that, you know, there's a bit of chit-chat back and forth over the food. You know, how was your journey? Have a good day? You know, everything going well? And they spend some of the afternoon together. But before they go to bed, something happens. See, outside of the house, the men of Sodom, about every single man almost in that city has gathered around Lot's house. And they call to Lot inside of the house. They say, Lot, where are these men that are visiting you tonight? Bring them out to us, because we want to have relations with them. And when I say relations, it's not, hey, I want to be your friend. If we were talking about literal translation, it's bring out these men, we want to have sex with them. That is the situation that is going on. And this must have been quite a terrifying situation for Lot, because almost every single man of the city is outside his door, and they are making sinful demands of him, and nobody is on his side. And it's at this point where the contrast between Lot and the men of the city could not be greater. I mean, we have Lot, who is rescuing and saving the angels and bringing them in and protecting them with a meal, and then we have everybody outside making extremely wicked and sinful, perverse demands, and Lot is the only one trying to protect his visitors. Everybody is against him, and so it's really no wonder that the Lord wants to destroy the city. No, as a narrative, we're not reading through this saying, wow, yeah, you know, I really think these people are good people. I think they should, you know, God should really let it slide. No, this is disgusting, and I totally understand why God wants to wipe this place out. And so here Lot is, and he's just trying to house these two angels. And the fact that he was so adamant earlier for these two angels to stay with him, well, it suggests that he knew, he had an inkling that if they stayed in the town center, something bad was going to go down. He knew that in this wicked, sinful city of Sodom, if two strangers walked in one afternoon and hung out in the town square till it got dark, well, something was just bound to go wrong. And then what Lot does next, it absolutely blows my mind. Lot goes outside of his house and he shuts the door behind him. And he tells the people who are gathered around the house, he says, please, my brothers, do not act so wickedly. And if we were going to give it a modern Craig translation, he'd be saying, let's be reasonable here. We don't need to get rash or do anything crazy. And then he says something that makes me extremely angry. Genesis 19, verse 8, he says, behold, I have two daughters who have not known any man. Let me bring them out to you, and you can do to them whatever you please. Just don't do anything to these men, because they have come under the shelter of my roof. That's enough to make every parent weep. Behold, I have two daughters. Have them. And it's right here for me that this whole story just starts breaking down. And it's right here for me where a whole lot of hurt and question springs up within the mind. What is going on? It's right here where I stop and I say, Lot, what are you doing? I just got to stop reading right there, and I just say, Lot, what's going on with this situation, man? I mean, you've got two daughters, and you're just offering them out to this wicked and perverse people. Lot, you've protected your daughters your whole life. Lot, I'm sure you tried to raise them to be good kids, and I'm sure you brought them up in the faith, and you taught them the commandments, and you taught them how to love God, but Lot, you're just throwing away their innocence. Lot, you're throwing their whole lives away. What are you doing? Lot, do you not realize that you have angels inside of your house? Lot, don't you realize that you're supposed to be in the middle of a miracle right here? Do you not realize the power that is in your house right now? You have two angels sitting at your dinner table, and you are taking your daughters and you're throwing them to the slaughter. Lot, what are you doing? You have two of God's attendants right there in your home. Lot, what is going through your mind? Do you not realize the power that's available to you right now? And Lot, he's supposed to be standing in the middle of a miracle, and these angels are sent to this city to rescue him. And yes, I can recognize that we are at an extremely high point of tension in the story right now. I get that. Things are pretty crazy, and the world is just spinning a little too fast, but he doesn't realize the power of God that surrounds him. He doesn't know. Why does he not ask the angels to come and help him in this situation? Why does he go outside alone and shut the door behind him? He knows that the men of the city are sinful and unreasonable. Why does he try and do this alone? Why does he shut the door behind himself? Why does he not just stop and for a moment before he even opens the door, just say, God, I need your help right now? Why doesn't he stop and just making a little assessment of the situation? Why doesn't he turn to God? Why didn't he run to meet the angels? Why does he go outside alone? These are the questions that run through my mind as I read this story. And in 2 Peter 2:7, it says, if he rescued Lot, a righteous man who was distressed by the depraved conduct of the lawless, for that righteous man living among them day after day was tormented in his righteous soul by the lawless deeds that he saw and heard. See, Lot, he's called a righteous man. This is why he was rescued from the city. But Lot did not recognize the power of God that was available to him on that day. Why? Why didn't he know? Why didn't he clue in? Why wasn't there something that sparked in his mind? It's because of the city that he lived in. See, he had lived there and he was surrounded by sin. And day after day, he was tormented in his soul by what he saw and what he heard. And it was a slow process. It wasn't just one day everything's new, but it was a slow creeping in. It was day after day. It slowly affected how he thought. It was just a slow little creep. Just a little change here, a little difference there. He probably didn't even notice it, but his perspective on life changed. Now in 2 Peter, it says that the sin of the city was greatly bothering him. So I'm not saying that Lot is an extremely wicked man. I'm not trying to say something that the Bible's not saying. I'm not trying to be contradictory, and I'm not trying to paint him as something that he's not. Because if he wasn't a righteous man, then God wouldn't have rescued him. But what I am saying is that he lived his life in this city, and it changed his perspective on God. And every single day that he lived there, it affected his relationship with God. It tormented his soul. The sin of the world that he lived in, it just crept down into the deep cracks of his heart and of his mind, to the point that it eventually got difficult for him to recognize the power of God that was in his presence. So what does that have to do with us? Because I'm not trying to call all of us a bunch of wicked sinners today. I'm not doing that. But what I will say is, just like Lot, we can be righteous. We can come to church and we can be involved and we can be here and we can sing the songs, and we did that. But what can happen is we can be so surrounded by sin and perversion that it changes the way that we think, and we can get so in tune with the world that God can be in our very midst and we don't even recognize it. See, God can be trying to do a miracle in our life, and we're just not even paying attention. Why? Because we're too worried about what's happening outside of the house. God sends 2 angels to rescue Lot, but he's too worried about all of the commotion outside that he can't pay attention to the power and the opportunity that is inside of the house. And so as the angry mob of men press forward against Lot, the angels have to grab him and pull him inside so that he escapes the wrath. And then the next morning they say, to Lot, they say, please hurry up and leave because the place is going to be destroyed. But Lot doesn't leave again. And so again, the angels take him by the hand and they pull him out of the city. And I think if the angels never grabbed Lot by the hand, which has happened twice now, I don't think he makes it out of the city. Because he's too wrapped up with what was happening outside of the house to pay attention to anything else. The fear of what was going on outside overpowered the miracle that was awaiting him inside. See, we can get so desensitized to the power of God that just like Lot, there could be angels in our very midst ready to minister to us, and we don't even know it. we get so wrapped up with the panic and we get so wrapped up with the negativity that we just march out the door and we are blind to everything that is inside the house, and we say, I can settle this on my own. Lot wasn't alert enough to say, wait a minute, I've got angels in my house right now. Wait a minute, I have a very present help in a time of trouble. We aren't alert enough sometimes to say, wait a minute, I've got God on my side. We just march out our front door and we say, honey, I'll do this on my own. Genesis 19:11, it says, and they struck with blindness the men who were at the entrance of the house, both small and great, so that they wore themselves out trying to find the door. They wore themselves out trying to find the door. They are banging on the outside of the house, and I don't know how long it takes to wear yourself out trying to find a door handle. I mean, if I was placed outside of a house, if I was blindfolded outside of a house, well, you know it's about hip height. So that gives you a clue. And you know, well, there's only so many walls. So how hard is it to find a door handle? I mean, yes, on one hand, you were just struck with blindness, but you got a lot of teammates in this. So how long does it take to wear yourself out trying to find the door? See, the men of the city, they are at the door and they are banging, they are hitting on the side of the house, and they wear themselves out trying to find the door to get inside. The noise, the persecution, the sound level outside, it's not done, but it picks up. And I don't know how long you can keep your sanity in that situation when life is just hitting on the outside of your house and it's not giving up. I think 20 seconds is too long to listen to the hands beat on the outside of your house. It's too long. This is the horror movie that Lot is living in. I don't know how you keep your mental sanity in that kind of situation. You thought the noise level was loud when they were yelling at him? Think about the noise level as they hit on the side of his house trying to break it down. Think about how terrifying of a situation this is, lasting likely, I don't know, but several hours in my estimation. How do you keep your sanity after that? See, right before Lot's rescue, the noise level increased. Right before salvation came, the noise of the city increased. See, right before God worked a miracle and intervened in the situation, the noise level of the city, it greatly picked up. Church, I think we're living in a time of increased noise. I think we're living in a time of increased noise. We've got war in Russia and Ukraine, and we've got earthquakes going on in Turkey, and we've got spy balloons going over our sky. I read today that the Church of England is exploring a gender-neutral God. We can't say Abba Father anymore. We got to say Zizé Zem Deity. The noise level is picking up. There is constant media pressure about the energy crisis and the environmental crisis, and gas prices are going through the roof, and grocery prices are going through the roof. You look at the world today, you say, my goodness, thank goodness I'm already born. I don't want to get raised in that. My word, if you got children in your school system and you've ever been in a class, I've done some substitute teaching over the past year. It is scary. It is terrifying what is happening. All of this noise, it begins to play in the back of our mind, and the noise is being amplified as time goes on. I got news for you. It's only going to get worse. The noise is only going to continue to pick up, and there is so much that we are listening to. There is so much pressure going on around us. There are so many voices hitting on the sides of our homes and on the sides of our churches that we just begin to get stressed out. There is so much noise coming from outside. And maybe you're at the point that you just don't know what to do because there is so much noise outside and you are getting a little intimidated. Maybe you're stuck staring outside the window like Lot because the noise is so loud. You're paralyzed by fear because of all the noise hitting on your house. If you're feeling that way, I have good news for you. The devil is amping up noise because he's scared. He is desperate. He is lashing out. This is a tactic to keep you paralyzed in fear so that you don't move to safety. Think about Sodom. Think about the situation that we're dealing with. Think about it. The devil is losing a stronghold. That's what's going on here. The devil is losing a stronghold of sin. He had this city wrapped around his pinky finger. Do you think he wants this city to be destroyed? Do you think he wants God's intervention to even get in a 50-mile radius? No. There is no way. There is no way that Satan will want to lose his influence in this great seat of power that he has. So what does he do when God is trying to intervene in the situation? He ramps up the noise, and he ramps up the chaos, and he ramps up the depravity of the world and the city that is going on. And I can tell you from personal experience that he's doing the same thing right now. He sees the same signs we see. He reads the same newspaper headlines. He knows that his time is short and that his strongholds are going to be broken down. He knows that the Lord is going to intervene, and it's not going to be a whole lot longer before he gets cast into the bottomless pit. So he is amping up the noise. He is trying to paralyze us and make us focus on the outside noise. Am I going to be able to send my kid to post-secondary school? What are my finances going to happen? Where are they going to come from? Where is my help going to come from? How do I keep my family safe from the pressures of the world? And how do I handle my kids going to school where transgenderism is encouraged and taught as normal? How can I keep my family safe when I'm fighting a spiritual enemy that I can't see? What do I do with all of this amplified noise? Musicians, if you could return. We have so many questions about what is happening outside that we are forgetting the power that's inside the house. We need to refocus. We need to wake up. We need to realize and say the noise outside doesn't contain my answer. And the noise outside, it doesn't contain my fate. The noise outside, it doesn't have an answer to my questions. And its threat of violence and doom is not my final destination. I recognize that the power is in the house. The power that I have been looking for is inside the house. The increase in noise is happening because of the movement of God that is about to take place in this world. The noise is being amplified because he's trying to hypnotize you with fear. The warning signs are taking place, and in the midst of the chaos of the world, we can choose to listen to the panic and the uncertainty of the news outlets, or we can stay alert and realize that God has been sitting at the kitchen table the whole time. It's time to ask for some help. It's time to say, I realize that the power is in the house. It's time to open up the eyes and say, God, you've been here the whole time. You've been here the whole time. And to our credit, church, it's not like we've ignored him. We haven't ignored him. I'm not here to harp on you and make you feel terrible. We haven't ignored him. We had supper with him. And we talked to him. We opened up in prayer. We sang songs today. And we worshiped him. We did that. But after all that interaction, we can't leave him just sitting there, because we get so distracted by the noise that's outside. See, in the midst of life's craziness, God is sitting here just wondering, are they going to ask me for help? See, God is in the house today. You can feel him right now. And he's just sitting there. And he's just wondering, are they going to ask me for help? I like my time with them. I love the time with the kids, the grandkids. It's wonderful. But are they going to ask me for help? Or are they going to go outside those walls again, thinking they can do it on their own? What are we going to do? Are we going to be like Lot and just walk out the front door, pretending like we've got it all under control? Are we going to take a moment and realize that the power is inside of the house? Because we can be good Christians and still miss out on the power and the miracles that God wants to bring to us. Would you stand with me tonight? We have a moment. We have an opportunity to just stop. Because we're still in the house. We're still in God's house. This is God's house here. And we have a moment to recognize that God is here. And we've got a moment to recognize that I don't have to go out that door alone. I don't have to leave this house without God. But I can stop and I can just spend some time with him, because God is here. The power is available to me right now. The power is right here, and his presence is right here. And I've been wondering where the answer is going to come from. And all the reports that I'm getting back are negative, but the power is right here. You don't need to go outside looking for the answer or the solution to your problem. And you don't need to be frightened about what is happening on the outside of these walls. Because the power that you've been looking for the whole time is right here. The protection that you've been looking for is right here. The escape from sin that you've been looking for is right here. You've been Googling programs and you've been looking up sources for help and you've been making calls, but the answer is right here. Are you going to grab onto that tonight? The answer is right here. And if you feel that way and if you want the answer, why don't you come on down to the altar? Because you don't want to be paralyzed with fear. You don't want to live your life paralyzed with fear. Why don't you come down? Because the power is right here, and you don't have to go around life fearing what's going to happen. Why don't you make your prayer tonight? God, help me focus on you. Open up my eyes, Lord, to see that the power is right here. God, help me to see my salvation. Help me to focus on my salvation. God, you've not given me a spirit of fear, but you've given me the spirit of power, of love, and of a sound mind. Why don't you experience that power for yourself tonight? Why don't you come on down to the altar and say, God, I need your power. Lord, you are the only answer. You are the only solution. God, I need your power tonight.